influential book?
The most influential book?
Yes.
For what purpose?
For, I'd say, I guess any book that you believe that changed, like, I guess, or like America or like European, because I put that first off, the Bible was influential because
Right.
it started Christianity, and it branched off into many more books that followed.
Right.
And that when coming to America and during the colonies, the Declaration of Independence shaped America because we broke off from Great Britain and started our own government. Just, it doesn't matter what type of book, just like in general. What do you believe is the most influential?
Right, that's what I was asking. Influential for what? To have an impact on what? Because certainly the Bible has had a tremendous impact on civilization. But if you're looking at higher education, and I think back to my own, the works, one work that influenced my teaching, I'll even focus it to that level, is a book by Paulo Freire called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And people that have read that book often talk about how they had an aha moment too, about how significant education is, but in the sense of understanding what's going on with you, particularly if you're in an underrepresented group, or you've been oppressed, or people assume you can't make it, or you've been given messages that don't strive for this because you don't have what it takes. Those kinds of messages that say that keep the status quo. Well, oftentimes it's education that gets us away from the status quo. And when any of us move from the status quo, we change the structure. We change that is transformative. Anytime someone from a marginalized group or an underrepresented group, or a group that's been isolated or challenged, when they are changed, everybody else gets to change by the very presence of who's there, you know.
For you, what makes a book so, I guess, influential? Like, what does it have to have? Like, data, like pictures, or anything?
A book has to be written in such a way that for it to make a difference in my life, that when I'm reading it, I can relate to it. I can say, oh, I get it, or yes, I understand. Now that doesn't mean that the book has to be an easy read, because a book can be challenging. Paulo Freire's work, by the way, is not easy to read. When I used that book and when I taught at the University of Nebraska, I had many students come up and they were angry. This book is too hard to read. I read the same paragraph 5 times, and I'm not even sure that I get it. And I thought, this is great, because the fact that you're still reading it 5 times means you're trying to understand it, because you're trying to find meaning and relevance to you. So that's, if the writing style is such that it's engaging, that I feel like I want to understand it better. Obviously the topic's got to be something that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Because if not, it's like, that's not going to happen.
Let's not go near that.
It's not happening. But I like, don't always get it in writing, but I like a bit of humor, or hopefulness. It really depends on the kind of book, the topic that those signs of something deeper, something richer, expansive, I enjoy. Creative imagery, doesn't have to have pictures, but the imagery helps immensely. Something that triggers memory, good, bad, or ugly.
Going back to creativity, when authors are writing any piece of work, do you believe that it doesn't have to be in modern time, it could be back at any time, that does the author necessarily have to be so creative, like how to say this, but does like would one book, I guess, reflect another book and like branch off and create more books or any writings? So does the author have to necessarily create a book and be like, okay, well, I hope this creates other... I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Can somebody write something that it would be the one piece, the one work,
Yeah, the
and
one...
it's all that they've done? And could that be enough?
Yes.
Absolutely. Someone could write I think any one of us may have that book within us that we write or never write. But I think we have that in us, whether it's from our lived experiences, from something that we've studied. It's just do we have the discipline, do we have the drive? But I think that certainly there are people that have written a primary book, and that's it. And then sometimes efforts to write a follow-up, a sequel to it it just didn't work. It's like, you should have stopped after that first. But, it also depends on when one starts to write. Because, let's say you don't even begin to really take writing seriously till later on in life, and what you have is a compilation, versus someone who wrote at a very early age and then said, let me try this and let me go a different direction. I mean, you can see that certainly in higher education, in the academy, with faculty. If you look at their resumes, their vitas on articles that they've written, and most of us would say, please don't look at those early works, because it's kind of embarrassing. It's kind of like an advanced paper, versus those works that we do manage to write that reflect a deeper level of understanding and questioning.
My last question is, if we never learned how to write, if nothing came about whatsoever, what would you think the world would be like?
I'm sure it would manage. When I think of civilizations and societies that don't rely on the written word, that rely on storytelling, on different ways of sharing wisdom. I tell people sometimes that some of those brilliant people I know had like a third-grade education, but knew stories and lived richly, lived rich lives. And some of the most ignorant people I know have PhDs and have read extensively, but can't teach about life, don't pass on wisdom, don't pass on aspects of life that help us to strive and thrive. And I think of the wisdom of my grandmothers. You can't surpass that, and neither one of them had formal education. They weren't writers by any sense of the word, but they knew stories, and they knew their truths, and they had examples. In Spanish, have you heard the phrase of dichos? Dichos, or just, they're like phrases that are words of wisdom. You're better off alone than in bad company. Just little nuances, little sayings, almost like you see in the fortune cookies. But they're sayings from the elders, passing on to the the younger generations, to just give you, it's food for thought, but ultimately to have a positive impact on the life. Little things like think before you speak. The things that seem real obvious, but you say it with a catchy phrase or play with the words in Spanish, and then it sticks to you, and you carry that. It's not something you read. You didn't. No one wrote it down, but you have it. You've internalized it. So I think that not all societies certainly rely on the written word in ways that we assume is essential.
Okay, thank you.